So as the co-chairs, do Brandy or Bess want to get us started?
Yes, this meeting is called to order at 7:00 p.m. Are we taking roll?
Do you want me to take roll?
Yes, please.
Okay. Jessica Loya,
Here.
Brandy Alexander,
Here.
Gabriela Flores,
Present.
April Jones,
I'm here.
Bess Bailey,
I'm here.
Yvonne Salinas. Nope. Tara Adler.
Here.
Okay, so we're all here except for Yvonne.
All right. Well, welcome to the meeting, ladies and gentlemen. We called to attendance, so welcome to all of our guests. Secretary, if you have the minutes, can you read the minutes and then we can approve? I don't know if we
The agenda or the minutes?
need the minutes from last week's meeting.
Okay.
So in city council, when it's sent out ahead of time and you guys can make this decision, we just read it on our own and vote to approve it. So we approve the minutes from last meeting and the agenda all at the same time. And it
Okay.
would be listed under, the word is escaping me, but we can read it. It's a committee decision. I'm just telling you that in case you would like to skip over that, but it should be. I sent it late, so it may not be on the website. So if you want to read it this time, but if it was out with the agenda, then the public and everybody could read it ahead
Okay.
of time.
I personally feel like we should read it since it might not be on that site, and then we can approve it that way after we read it again. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. Does the secretary need to do that? Secretary Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would be me then. Let me make sure I've got them pulled it back up here. I think I closed them out.
Since I wrote them, do you want me to just do it, April, and then I won't do it after this?
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great.
So it says the meeting was called to order at 7 p.m. The committee reviewed the sunshine law. Meetings for the group will be held on the first Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. Meetings will be held virtually due to COVID-19 until further notice. The committee reviewed the ordinance that created the Equity and Inclusion Committee and had an initial discussion about creating bylaws. The decision was made for 3 committee members, Bess Bailey, Jessica Loya, and Brandy Alexander, to meet outside of our meeting time and write the first draft of the bylaws. Ideas on purpose: public engagement, city practices, review city codes, housing and livability, economic development, develop a strategic plan. Developing a strategic plan will take time and needs data and will help us to set goals. Ideas for articles: name, mission statement, membership, purpose, progress report, and how we vote. Eric Boleyn will provide Parks and Rec bylaws for the committee to review and email a copy of the current city budget. Committee members will eventually be appointed to a 2-year term, but because we do not want to replace the entire committee at the same time, the first committee members will have a 1 or 2-year term based on the term ending date of the person that appointed the committee member. The term lengths are as follows: Jessica Loya, 1-year term; Brandy Alexander, 2-year term; Gabriela Flores, 2-year term; April Jones, 1-year term; Bess Bailey, 2-year term; Yvonne Salinas, 2-year term; Tara Adler, 1-year term. The committee secretary going forward is April Jones. Interim committee co-chairs are Bess Bailey and Brandy Alexander. The committee will have a special meeting to review the first draft of the bylaws on January 21st at 7 o'clock. The meeting was closed at 8:30 p.m.
Thank you for reading those minutes for us, Lisa. Do we all approve? All approve, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, the minutes have been approved. Okay, and so moving forward, if we look at the agenda, it looks like tonight we're looking at our bylaw review and our adoption. This, has everyone had a chance to review the bylaws? Yes, okay. So we'll start at the beginning. If we look at our document for the bylaws of North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Committee. We'll start with the first article and kind of go down. I don't know, Bess, do you want to take notes in addition to April as well, or how do we want to kind of move forward?
I can. My audio might start lagging, especially if I'm talking. My internet connection's not great right now, but
Okay.
I will. I can definitely be back up to taking notes as comments in the document.
Thank you so much. April, you good to go? All right, perfect. Okay, so Article 1. We are the Equity and Inclusion Committee. Any questions, comments concerning on that portion of the bylaws? Okay.
Can I just ask a quick question, Brandy, just for clarification?
Yes.
And it's kind of one of those like following the city rules questions.
Yes.
Are we allowed to pull the document up and edit it together? Like,
Oh, like share the screen.
yeah, is that,
Is
I
that
mean,
okay?
is that in line with the rules of the process? Because that seems like it might just go faster if people can read it, saves you from having to read it out loud, and then people can toss out their edits and we can edit it live.
You're right. That's a good idea, Lisa. Any?
Yeah, we are fully public right now. It's being, it'll be up for view. So yes, we could do that.
Okay, so does it matter who needs to, who can, Lisa, will you have to do it? Let's share the screen.
No, oh, you mean share the screen? I don't know, Stephen, can we?
Yeah, you have the ability to share screen, so whoever wants to can do.
Okay,
To do that, or I definitely can. And
I would say maybe the person who's going to be making edits might want to share.
April,
Wait, isn't Bess making the edits as we go to the document?
Bess is taking secondary notes just because her audio is a little challenged right now.
Yeah, I'm just able to take notes on the minutes and edit the document and share
That's
my.
what I mean.
That's right.
I can share screen. I was planning on doing this in the Google Doc, so we all had access to it, and you could see it update live. How does that sound?
That's
So
fine.
basically, if we just all pull up the Google Docs, you can see it as we go.
Yeah.
So I can see that you're on it right now.
Do we want the public to see it too, though? That's
Yeah, Beth said she was going to broadcast, right?
Yep, I'll share screen now.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, that should be good to go.
Awesome. All right. So then if you go to Article 2, the purpose and mission. It just kind of says the North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Committee will recommend and provide feedback on policy and promote diversity and inclusion through community engagement. The proposed update is that we say the purpose of North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Committee is to make North Kansas City the best place to live for all of its citizens. In addition to the mission of North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Committee is to uphold community values while promoting community involvement for all citizens from historically underrepresented communities. By developing a strategic plan for our city, we will ensure our governing bodies and the city's workforce represent our diverse community. The North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Committee will serve as a resource to promote civic, cultural, and economic engagement. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns, or amendments they would like to propose to that?
This is Gabby. I just had a question about like what does the yellow mean? And maybe because I read it like this was the original and then someone had an update and then someone else had an update. Me personally, I like the third option as the description of our purpose and mission versus option 1 and option 2. But I'm not sure if that was the intention.
So it's my understanding, these are the suggestions that were made when we came together, and then that final, I think that third one is just that final piece that we came up with. We just kind of detailed what we actually came up with and what we think will be best. If it's highlighted, I think best, are you just highlighting it as you go, or was that already like that because we made it comments on the side?
Yeah,
It'll show up as yellow when there are comments on the side. Gabby, just to orient you to this, this piece that says the first sentence was what was originally there. And then the two proposed updates would be they were written together. The first one being a purpose statement and the second one being a mission statement. The reason why the mission statement is highlighted is we just left in comments on the side what we wanted to include as part of a mission statement.
So would the proposed updates be in place of that first paragraph or sentence, or would that be in addition to?
It's the purpose and the mission. So the first one is the purpose. The proposed update it says the purpose of.
What about the above that though? Would it include all of that then, or just the proposed updates? Yeah.
So Beth and Jess kind of helped me. Were we including that top part? I believe that's
the top part is important. The top part is, I think, included in the purpose.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Okay.
And I think going forth also, anything that's highlighted was, I think, meant to be a point of discussion for the group, like something that we needed to see what we could do there.
Great. Any suggestions on either of these?
I would say, I think you can combine those first two then. So if you were keeping the top one, you could say North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Committee would recommend and provide feedback on policy and promote diversity and inclusion through community engagement, comma, making North Kansas City the best place to live for all its citizens.
I think that highlighted section is kind of the same as if you were to combine those two. I mean, I think that first paragraph and that second paragraph are saying essentially the same thing, are they not? I mean, what do we need?
Like the mission is just, it gives us specific steps. Your mission outline the steps you're going to take. The purpose is to say, this is why we're here. But that mission says, these are the steps we're looking to take. And
the who, what, like the who, what, when, where, why, how of it all, like how we're going to do these things or what we plan to do.
Okay.
Can I suggest that we change the word citizen to residents?
oh, yes.
It's repeated throughout the document also, I believe, but
Yeah, we do.
I just think it's a more inclusive term.
I agree with that statement.
Or denizens. We could use denizens. Just means all people that live here.
I think if we have residents throughout, then let's just keep the language the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question. So we are the Equity and Inclusion Committee, yet our purpose doesn't embrace the equity part. So, you know, promoting diversity and inclusion through community engagement, do we feel like we need to add it there, or is it spoken to enough in the mission? You know, how, because that's a little bit trickier to, you know, to ensure equity, but we can in the way of, you know, by way of policy and procedures and, you know, fair RFP process and all of those things are equity related. So I feel like we may not have it embedded in our purpose and mission.
We could change that. So the North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Committee would recommend and provide feedback on policy and promote diversity and inclusion. And we could essentially throw in there somewhere to ensure like equitable practices and decisions.
Mm-hmm.
What what if we said something like feedback on policy and procedures to promote diversity and inclusion and ensure equitable practices through community engagement and through community and civic engagement or something, like you can couple them in there.
Like that bottom piece, that bottom sentence in the second, added to that, kind of rearrange that.
Of the purpose or up top?
Are you talking about the purpose or are you talking about the mission?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was talking about the purpose where it says provide feedback on policy. We could take out to, and put to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion through community engagement.
Oh, that's nice, yeah.
I would just take out the of its maybe in the end to clean it up a little bit, it'd be a little more concise. So making North Kansas City the best place to live for its residents. So all of. Does everybody like that purpose piece?
Mhm. Okay. Anything for the mission?
So I think, all I have to add to that is in the mission, we should update citizen to resident again. And just kind of try to be aware to do it throughout the rest of the document if we used it in other places.
Is there a replace option on this on Google Docs? We can just go through and do it now and then change it if we need.
And
I'm not sure, but I can spend a second looking for that.
Okay, might be under edit or something.
And I'm just not sure that do we need the second? I get the intention of the second part, but it feels like maybe a run-on sentence or something like to uphold community values while promoting community involvement for all residents. It feels like that part was, the next part doesn't feel like, it feels like a dangler on the sentence. Like we could say, especially residents from historically underrepresented communities or something like that. Like, I don't know if that was the intention.
This mission statement was a really decent attempt at an idea, but we also didn't feel right creating a mission statement without more of us there. So these are like ideas more than a polished mission statement. So you probably caught a sentence that started and did not finish, but if you like that update, just let me
know. Do we need to say, because I would assume that the city has a strategic plan, like a big overarching strategic plan. I might be wrong on that, Eric, but do we need to call out that this is very specifically like a diversity strategic plan that integrates into the city's larger strategy?
The strategic plan itself, I believe, is actually titled in the ordinance, the Equity and Inclusion Strategic Plan. So we could potentially update it in this document to reflect what it's called in the ordinance. I would have to look at the ordinance to know for sure, but I'm 90% certain that's what it was titled in the ordinance.
I've got the ordinance pulled up. You want me to look to see?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's at the top under like purpose.
Okay, let me scan it. I'll get back to you.
Okay.
The plan should include suggested strategy and actions to achieve stated goals and will be known as the North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Strategic Plan. It's in the top, like you said, under G, purpose and objectives.
So I am just doing, I did just a little Google. I'm just saying in writing a mission statement, we should basically be focusing on what we're doing it, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it. So if we hit those 3 key points in a concise manner, I think that's the goal. That's what we should be going for.
You said what, how, and why.
Mm-hmm. So I think the first sentence hits the what,
The second is the why.
or even the how by developing, because that's what we plan to do, develop
Yeah.
the equity and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
So this is maybe a technicality, but it seems like our work is done once the strategic plan is done. And so I think we need to be able to say, we need to be able to bridge like implementation. And I think we talked a little bit about that during the meeting, like,
Mm-hmm.
there's, getting the plan is going to be part of the work, but then ensuring, implementation of the strategies throughout the city practices will be a second phase of the work. And is that this same committee that oversees that, then we'll want to call that out here.
And we say by developing and implementing assisting in implementing the North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Strategic Plan.
You could do developing, implementing, and reviewing, because eventually after a while, we will also be reviewing it or looking it over.
Yeah, or something that means ongoing, like continued implementation.
And also, technically, are we implementing it, or is the city? Like, we are advising the city with this, like, essentially we'll put the plan in front of the city and city council, and then you guys will decide.
Well, depending on what you feel the purpose of it is, but I know one of the things we had talked about is being an organization that hosts community events to bring ideas together. So that would be something that we would be doing outside of city council or ordinances, or if we still saw that as a piece of something we could bring.
Okay.
I kind of feel like that's captured in the last sentence, will serve as a resource or a convener to promote civic, cultural, and economic engagement. If I think I'm capturing what you're saying, Lisa, I think these are 2 big distinct chunks of work, like developing and strategizing, and then being a convener of the community.
Yep, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Brandy, do you just want to read the whole thing, how it is now, so we can see how it sounds?
Sure. Okay. The mission, do you want me to start at the top or just go from the mission only?
The mission.
Okay. The mission of North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Committee is to uphold community values while promoting community involvement for all residents, especially those from historically underrepresented communities. By developing, implementing, and reviewing the North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Strategic Plan for our city, we will ensure our governing bodies and city's workforce represents our diverse community. The North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Committee will serve as a resource to promote civic, cultural, and economic engagement. We need a comma after city. Oh, or do we need that for our city part?
I was going to say, I think we could delete that.
By developing, implementing, and reviewing the North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Strategic Plan, we will ensure our governing bodies and city workforce represents our diverse community. Sound good?
Okay, governing bodies. So could we potentially put, by developing, implementing, reviewing the North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Strategic Plan, we will ensure we will ensure our governing bodies uphold equitable practices and
Equitable practices in our city, yeah.
because its main purpose isn't necessarily ensuring that it's part of the purpose, but I think the main purpose is to review and ensure that the practices in the city are equitable, which would include ensuring that the workforce is representative of the community.
Agreed. Any other feedback, ladies?
You could put governing bodies uphold.
Gabrielle, you're on mute.
That was exactly what I was saying, was we missed the uphold part.
And the city's workforce is representative of our diverse community.
Y'all want me to read it again, or are we good to go?
I like it.
So do I.
And do we need to delete proposed update now? Yeah, okay, you got it, Bess.
Awesome. Okay, let's move to Article 3, which is the definition. This is kind of just where we define some of the wording for the bylaws. So it says, equity is when structural barriers that have historically disadvantaged certain groups are removed, and everyone has access to the opportunities and tools they need to thrive. Equity is measured in outcomes and is achieved when one's identity can no longer predict their success. Inclusion means that everyone feels welcomed, valued, and encouraged to fully participate and belong. Equality is about ensuring that every individual has an equal opportunity to make the most of their lives and talents. Diversity includes all the ways that people differ, which encompasses the variation of social and cultural identities among people existing together. Any questions, comments, concerns, proposed updates for that portion?
You could take out the first equality, I think, and dash.
Out.
So it's all uniform.
Okay.
I think the other piece is there any other language we need to define to make sure that we're all on, I think, equal ground when we dive into the work we're going to begin doing?
Go back up to our mission a little bit.
The only term that might need a definition is historically underrepresented communities, because that really is a definition that's important, but it can change from community to community.
I was thinking the same
California's
thing.
underrepresented minority communities are different than.
Or maybe just the underrepresented part. What are your thoughts if it's just the underrepresented piece?
Well, I think, I think we should use it for sure. The historically underrepresented, it's just that that we'll have to say what that means for North Kansas City versus like, California, where Asians are not underrepresented, right? Or, and like in healthcare, it varies by discipline, what's considered historically underrepresented. So I think we can just come up with a definition that feels right. I don't think anybody's gonna
that's what I was
question it. Yeah.
Can we also define resident?
Yeah, because that was Eric called out a point about somebody had commented about resident and or business owner. And so I think that'll be, because I think business owners might assume that they're resident just because of their business. Yeah.
Good point. Okay, so I looked up a definition for historically underrepresented, and it says the term refers to groups who have been denied access and or suffered past institutional discrimination in the United States. And according to the census and other federal measuring tools, that includes African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanics, or Chicanos, Latinos, and Native Americans.
I would also include the LGBTQ plus community.
That part as well. And then how specific are we getting with this? Are we stepping into the economic portion? Because we mentioned economic equity, and I believe that is a big part of this as well. I feel like we should add a comma and say impoverished individuals or middle class to lower class. I don't know how we want to define that.
And what about, do we want to include individuals with disabilities?
Yeah, that was the point I was going to bring up. I mean, we could be kind of broad with it so that we're not limiting ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, similar to anti-discrimination languages, where you just kind of say like on the basis of, race, gender, ethnic origin, gender identity.
Yeah.
Without getting too specific.
Like a general inclusion statement.
Yeah.
April, can you repeat that so I can get it down as a note?
Yeah, let's see. Denied access due to their race or country of origin, gender identity, do we want to do socioeconomic status, or
I'll put something in the comments that might help us out. It's a general statement from like a university.
Well, and sexual orientation needs to be included.
Okay, veteran status, all that.
And physical or mental disabilities. Or, well, marital status, but I don't know if that was included before during the last discussion. Sorry, I'm trying to read and talk at the same time.
Gender, class.
Jess, I'm not sure, and I would love to know more. How would that differ from gender identity?
Gender class or gender and gender identity.
Gender class.
No,
I've never heard that term before.
Sorry, it was gender and class. So I was just adding extra things. Yes. So I think gender identity and gender could potentially just be thrown into one, and then class, which is also socioeconomic status. So it probably doesn't need to be included.
And Bess, I don't know if you saw Brandy's note. She dropped a borrowed text into the chat. So race, color, ancestry, religion, sex.
National, citizenship. Yeah, I definitely think citizenship would be a good one to include. Yeah.
So here's a super long list. It was originally in essentially the overview that I sent to Bryant when we first started discussing it, and it had like everything, I think, and it was ethnicity, gender, color, age, race, religion, disability, mental, physical, national origin, sexual orientation, as well as an infinite range of individual unique characteristics and experiences, such as communication styles, career path, life experience, educational background, geographic location, income level, marital status, military experience, parental status, and other variables that influence a person's influence personal perspective. I think that was the most elaborate list that we had.
That feels more than underrepresented communities.
That's just kind of everybody. I mean,
So
that's,
Yeah, I think
wonder if
age
we
is
need to
one of the
change
things
our-
out of there you could pluck out.
But I mean, I don't know if we want to change the historically underrepresented communities to be something broader potentially, or if we want to put the
This
definition.
may be a question for Eric. Is there a city non-discrimination statement or a city non-discrimination guideline, like in their HR practices, that we might just apply because it's city? That way it's consistent across.
Like the EEOO statement from the city, or
This is Eric. I can look through it. My guess is it would be a very general statement, but I'd be happy to, and I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me, but I'd be happy to look at what our HR policy says and provide some language to you, but I can't do it right this second.
No worries.
Can I leave that as a note, and then we can definitely come back to it as we continue working, so we're not on one definition and we can keep moving.
all right.
For some reason, I feel like there is not a statement of that nature. I can't remember if that was an issue that somebody brought forth or if the statement itself wasn't inclusive of all the people that it needed to include. But I do know that was brought up in the past as an issue, is that the city did not have some form of statement of that matter, or it did, but it wasn't inclusive. I can't remember.
which is one of the goals, is to review all of that stuff and make sure it does include inclusive language.
Or we did. I think we actually did. We had it include sexual orientation and gender identity, which wasn't previously included. I'm pretty sure
I
that.
don't think it included anything about LGBTQ in it.
But I do think we pushed that through at the very beginning before this committee was created. I can't quite remember.
The
And then
only other
Lisa-
thing,
Oh, go ahead.
the only other thing that I was going to say, from the list that you put in there, is age might be a possibility of something we wanted to add. And the other thing that will be, I think, specific to our group of something we've talked about and are concerned about would be people with housing instability. I don't know if that's too specific. And maybe we could include, just make a more inclusive who our residents are type of piece, but that's the only thing I was thinking.
So Lisa, do you remember a while back, City Council, I can't remember what you guys called it. It was like a statement that you guys all voted on. I think Bryant brought it forth, proposed it. What did that include? It was essentially like I'm so annoyed that I can't remember it right now. It was.
I think what you're talking about was the housing discrimination.
It was more of a statement that happened towards the beginning of all of the unrest in the country, and Bryant brought it forth. Give me one moment. Let me find it.
Was that the same night that they got rid of the ordinance, the whatever it was, the stand your ground type thing?
I think it was around then or before then, but it was essentially a statement that kind of stood in solidarity with all people. And then you guys all
and
voted
Eric
on it.
read it? Eric,
Yeah, it
you
was
read
released
it.
by the city. I know there were some people who did not sign off on this, but I
think
can't
it was a
remember
statement that
exactly.
Eric read. Yeah, give me a minute. Let me go back and look.
Okay, I might just
Eric,
ask.
do you remember that? In my memory, it's something that you read.
Yes, I'm sorry. You guys move faster than I can. I'm not that good at bringing things up that quickly. I am looking at our definition of equal opportunity employer with regard to your previous discussion there a moment ago.
Okay, and I'll look for, because it would have been in our, I think it would
So
have
the
been in our
question,
agenda.
all right, but the question you're asking at it in the moment has to, I think I will look for the recent ordinance that was passed by the council. If I may, I'll go ahead and read you, and this may not be all determinative, but this is our definition of equal opportunity employer. Except as allowed by law, it's the policy of the city of North Kansas City to hire individuals solely on the basis of qualifications and ability to do the job to be filled without regard to race, color, national origin, ethnic origin or ancestry, religion, sex, gender, disability, pregnancy, genetic information, age, military status, and any other characteristic provided by law. And I can give you that wording. That has to do with the hiring process. In addition, the city will make reasonable efforts to accommodate the known impairments of qualified individuals with disabilities and individuals' religious practices and observances to the extent required by law, unless undue hardship to the city would result. So I can send you that wording if that would be helpful. I'll go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Gabriella also put something in the chat from the hospital that kind of covers us all too. She says the hospital will not discriminate against prospective or current employees based on age, sex, race, religion, color, creed, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, or any other legally protected status. That covers us from things we may be forgetting.
Okay.
I'm going to leave these as notes on the side so that we can make sure it aligns with the city's language. And then Eric, will you be emailing that? Because I know I only got about 2/3 of what you listed off.
I'll do that here in a moment. You guys operate differently than we do at city council meetings.
We're figuring it out.
Yeah, we didn't come with any. The only other thing I was thinking as we go through this and we're discussing it as a group, if by the time we get to the bottom, do we want the same 3 people to do the final edits and bring back the second draft at our next meeting?
I would say and I could be wrong, Bess. You guys can tell me otherwise. I would just say that maybe for the purposes of having some fresh eyes look at it, we could pass it off to 3 other people.
Yeah, that's fine too.
Right.
That is fine with me. Does anyone want to pitch a definition for residents, or is there language somewhere within city information that would describe what residents of North Kansas City are?
Could we maybe, the part about the housing instability that's under the underrepresented definition, could we maybe move that to the definition of residents to include people who, do have issues with
Yeah,
housing?
I think that's a good idea, April. I was kind
I
of
think it's
looking
a
at
little
when I
bit more
said it.
related to that.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
like that idea.
Yep, I agree.
Residents are those who inhabit, because I feel like we have a homeless population that doesn't necessarily have a home here.
Those who live within the boundaries of North Kansas City
Mhm.
with that, like, regardless of whether, renting, owning.
A person who lives somewhere permanently on a long-term basis from the chat.
I'm not sure how to include this piece about regardless of housing instability. So if someone has a way to wordsmith that, I would absolutely love to take that suggestion.
Regardless of housing stability or instability. So whether or not you have a dwelling or not, right?
Could that all be summed up with status?
Mm,
Regardless of housing status. Yeah.
delete that with.
Remove the with.
Mhm. Thanks, Eric. I just got your email.
Does that make it confusing or no? What do you think?
Residents are those who live within the boundaries of North Kansas City permanently or on a long-term basis, regardless of housing status.
I mean, could you put in
Sounds like the same.
parenthesis like homeowner, renter, housing unstable, you know, like that way you kind of define what housing status means.
Does that appropriately capture? I'm not sure the language to use here. It's not something that's really in my vocabulary, but I would love to make this more inclusive and more welcoming.
Can we say
So
just
homeowner-
et cetera at that bottom, at the end of that to kind of
Leave it open.
more, or it, for example?
I think I would change, so homeowner, renter, then those experiencing housing instability.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because
Yeah,
I
I
guess
like that.
you could technically be a resident without necessarily renting or being a homeowner if you are residing with someone
Yeah,
also.
I like that. That's a good improvement.
Question is, this is long-term and permanently sound like the same thing to me.
Wait, what? I'm sorry, I didn't even catch that.
It says permanently or on a long-term basis. I know it's not the same thing. It just sounds like it's the same thing.
We could probably, I think permanently just would imply a homeowner versus a renter.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
think
maybe we could just
that's
remove it.
different. Should we, so Jess, is your proposal to make it read, hold on me. Those who live within the North Kansas City, or sorry, residents are those who live within North, geez Louise, struggling here guys, sorry.
All right.
Residents are those who live within the boundaries of North Kansas City, regardless of housing status.
Yeah.
So then take
I
out.
think that seems more, yeah.
Yeah, that seems more inclusive too.
Mm-hmm. And then we kind of sum up what we mean by that, by the homeowner, renter, those experiencing housing instability, et cetera.
Any other proposed changes to any of this section? Definitions to add?
I don't think so, but I think as we continue with the remainder of the bylaws, if you see language that you're like, ooh, we should define this, keep that in mind so that we can always come back to it and add words to define.
Okay. Moving into Article 4. This is where we would talk about our role. So it reads, the role of EIC shall consist of, but not be limited to the following. So section 1, to advise and assist City Council in creating and implementing practices and programs that promote diversity and equity. I'm going to stop here. Any amendments to that section?
I just want to point out, I think that we've been spelling out Equity and Inclusion Committee and not abbreviating it to EIC in other parts. So I don't know if we want to note that it could be called the EIC or if we want to just spell it out everywhere.
At the very top of the document, that was kind of the point of doing it. And then I think we ended up just writing it all out. But at the very top of the document, when it says name, it says the Equity and Inclusion Committee, and then in parentheses, EIC.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
think it was to make it easier going through the document so we could just use EIC and know what it meant. But
So should we take EIC and put it?
If it's in parentheses at the top, I didn't catch that. I think it's fine.
I was thinking, do we have to define that and just put it, since we're abbreviating, maybe put it under definitions?
I don't think so. I think so. Even in looking at other cities, they did what Tara's saying, which is essentially they gave a name and then they had the parentheses, and then throughout the document, it was the abbreviation, just to, I'm sure, make it shorter and easier.
Okay.
That's standard practice in writing. As long as you list it once by the full name and include the abbreviation, you'll be good to go.
Sounds good. Okay, so any amendments, changes to that section 1 under Article 4 for the role?
One consistent change we've been making is to include, as we were working, we wrote diversity and equity.
Okay.
I think the change we need to make is make sure that we include inclusion as well, so that it would read diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay. All right, should we move to section 2? Is there anything else that anyone can think of for section 1? Okay. So section 2 reads, to work with residents, staff, and elected officials to develop the North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Strategic Plan. The plan should include suggested strategies and actions to achieve an overall goal of embracing our diversity and ensuring city practices are equitable and inclusive. The plan must be adopted by the City Council prior to implementation. The plan shall be reviewed and reevaluated biannually, beginning a year from its initial adoption by City Council.
When we are talking about reviewing and reevaluating, biannually to like reevaluate, it seems a lot to me, because I feel like a strategic plan, you should be working on it, not changing it constantly. But I'm interested in kind of what you all were talking about as you were writing it.
So this was my suggestion. So review biannually, not that it necessarily needs to change, but new laws are always introduced. Their City Council may have something that they talk about that we might want to either include in this document or, you know, adjust some things. I agree with what you're saying. The strategic plan is very comprehensive and details a lot, but just for the sake of staying up to date with everything that's going on, I feel like I don't know. I feel like the strategic plan is a living document.
Gotcha.
So review, but that's just my opinion. I agree with you too, though. I don't know what anyone else may have some suggestions on that aspect.
So as written, it would be every 6 months. So every 6th meeting, we would be reevaluating it.
Every 6th meeting, or yeah, because right now we're only meeting once a month.
Yeah. Which wouldn't give us a lot of time.
Could we write it so that like maybe it's not biannually, but maybe on an as needed basis based on what you're saying, Brandy, with if something comes up where we need to address it, we can then put it on the agenda to address it.
I think that's
So
we can. I mean, it's just for me, when I think of reevaluation, I think I'm looking at it, not that nothing is ever going to always change or needs to change, but it's just we take a look at it again to make sure, you know, that we're progressing forward and that, I don't know, just that every so often we're taking a look at it, and if there's something that doesn't fit anymore or does fit, it's either taken out or it's amended. I don't know.
So let me suggest this. So in explaining what this plan is, essentially, we have a lot of data gathering to do. It'll take us a while to originally create the document. After we create it, we'll pass it along to City Council. They will evaluate it, decide how to implement it. So to take our input and make it work for the city. And then in my mind, we should at least allow them a year, because it's not nothing. We're not going to give them a document and they're just going to snap their fingers and it's going to magically be implemented, or the things that they actually take from it, that they're just going to do it overnight. So it will take some time to implement the plan, and then from then I think we should check it over like every year, which is what Beaverton, Oregon has been doing. They've had annual reviews after it's been implemented, and essentially that review is looking back at what is working and what is not. So if they have implemented some sort of initiative that is supposed to promote diversity and they find it's not working at all, then after a year they would reevaluate and decide either to get rid of it or to amend it in a way in which it could potentially work better.
That makes
So
sense.
I think I would just say, I think we need to remember that this is a pretty big undertaking, and it is going to take time both on our part in creating, figuring out where the needs are, what we need to do. And then it's going to take some time on the part of the city to implement the plan.
I agree. Then thinking of it like that, it is a strategic plan. Annually may be best since it is new.
What if you said at least annually or as needed? Like that way, you at least touch it once a year. But if some new stuff shows up and new practices, new laws, new codes, then you can pull it out and say, how does this fit in?
I like that.
That
Then
works.
that way, if something does pop up, we can address it.
Versus waiting a year to address it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other additional feedback for section 2? Okay. Moving on to section 3. Section 3 says to make recommendations to the city council for ongoing diverse and inclusive public involvement, and to assist the city council by advising on methods in which the community can better participate in the decision-making process.
I went ahead and updated to include equitable.
Mm-hmm.
When we say in the decision-making process, which decision-making process? Does anyone?
All decision-making process.
So all of them.
As in, when we as a city decide that we want to create a new development, I think the input of the community is important. And in my opinion, there is a gap there that needs to be bridged. And that is, I think, on us to do.
All right, that makes
that
sense.
The city could do better at communicating in a more effective manner on all decisions that are made.
Okay. All right, ladies, any further feedback to this section? I feel like this section is good as is, but we could be missing a spot. Any other feedback?
Did I need to update language to reflect all decision-making processes? Or is it okay as is?
Well, I think we,
You could just make process plural, processes.
I feel like when we say the, we're talking about something specific. So I feel like it may need to read all, but that,
I kind of agree. I think all decision-making processes.
all right. Any other feedback on section 3? Section 4? Section 4, we have this highlighted in question mark because we would like feedback on this area. I believe that's why we highlighted it. But it's talking about self-promotion. So informational opportunities and other public initiatives to promote the EIC to the community. It remains the responsibility of the committee to create informational opportunities and public initiatives of presence in the community, engage in conversation, and seek feedback from our citizens, and act as a liaison between citizens and the city council.
So there's a few things there. One, back to that EIC versus Equity and Inclusion Committee, we should be the same throughout the document. So if we're going to use the full name, we should do that everywhere. And then also citizen to resident.
Yeah.
Again. And then I think to clarify, that was a question mark because we were just kind of trying to figure out what that meant. I know it was originally included and meant to mean that we are basically in charge of doing it ourselves. Like we are the ones who need to make sure the community knows we exist. We're the ones who need to make sure we are engaging the community, reaching out to them. But how we go about doing that, I think, is where we need to discuss. Like, what does that mean to us?
I think leaving it broad like that gives us a chance to like use our monthly meetings to decide how we're gonna, I mean, that's kind of what we're gonna be doing, right? Is deciding how to promote this committee to the community and get them involved. I mean, that's, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you could probably talk about the role of self-promotion without going into too much detail and keeping it more broad.
I was just going to recommend that, or to ask for the group to please consider, we have started each section with a to work, to make, to provide. And I think in this one, we could just say, we could start it at to create informational opportunities and public initiatives and ensure a presence in the community, engage in dialogue, you know, like that could be the action item, is that we're creating these opportunities for engagement in the community.
Okay, I agree with that.
Yeah.
There's a second citizens in that sentence too.
If you guys feel good about that, I will go ahead and clear the comment.
I feel good about it. All right. Section 5. And Section 5 says to provide recommendations and information to the City Council that would identify opportunities to address issues of diversity, promote diversity programs, and or provide guidance to create a more equitable, accessible, safe, welcoming, and inclusive government and community. I like that sentence. I don't know if it needs.
Yeah, I'm pretty good with that.
Should I update to create a more diverse, equitable?
We said provide guidance to create more equitable.
In that, the first part where it says that would identify opportunities to address issues of, how about we change that to inclusion and equity? And then down here where it says to create a more equitable, change that to diverse. That way we've got those 3 key terms in there.
Okay, to provide recommendation.
Equity and inclusion. That way you don't have 2 diversity in there twice back to back. And then if you go down and change equitable to diverse. Hopefully that.
I don't know how I feel about the change to diverse though, because we aren't diversifying anything that doesn't already exist. The diversity is already there. We're ensuring that it's equitable for all people. I guess what I'm saying is like the diversity already exists in North Kansas City. We are embracing it.
We've got that up there in the program. So how about provide guidance to create a more safe, welcoming, accessible, safe, and welcoming government and community?
But is our government diverse? Diversity exists in the community, but is it
Not in the government, it doesn't.
You are correct.
We might want to leave diverse, but I don't know.
All right. Guidance to create a more accessible, diverse, safe, welcoming, and inclusive government and community. I like it.
Okay. Any other feedback, suggestions, anything like that? No? All right. Section 6. To serve as a resource for city government and community by providing information and facilitating communication to better understand and celebrate our differences. Any amendments, adjustments to that piece? I feel like that's good as is, but what do you all think? We're getting some head nods, so we might move to section 7. Section 7. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying I like it.
Okay, thanks, Lisa.
Hey.
Section 7 reads, to review the city code and make recommendations on modifications that ensure ordinances are equitable and inclusive.
We need a period there, but yes.
We're good as is. You're thinking. We're good? Okay. Gabriella, you're on mute.
Well, my button's sticking. Sorry, guys. Does city code, is there any, I'm trying to think, is that, it feels kind of narrow. But I see what we're trying to do to make sure that city code is equitable for residents. Does it apply to anything beyond ordinances? Like, and I don't know anything about city government, but like ordinances, resolutions, programming, like, because city code, I would think, there's funding that goes into application of city codes and those kind, I don't know, I'm not trying to create a mountain out of a molehill, but I'm just thinking if that is this one broad enough? It feels pretty narrow. Do we want to open it a little bit? And I'm okay if we say no.
I like where you're headed with that, because code is
City code and policies. I don't.
Do you have any input here?
city code, policy, and programming.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what all would that include, I guess, is where I get most of it, but so are we just saying everything that comes from the city?
Yeah, I think like an example that comes to mind for me would be like, is the city newsletter promoting, are we using the right language and those types of things, making it more broad than just code is the website doing what we want it to be doing for equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Multiple languages, things like that.
Yeah.
Would that include things like football and basketball for being included on like Parks and Rec activities that are provided by the city? Like we have a baseball team, we do not have a football team or a basketball team. I've heard some reasonings as to why. Things like that. So basically everything, it's a blanket statement. And is that differing from what we're doing elsewhere? And Lisa, I was asking you, like, is it in the ordinance? Because I know like reviewing the city ordinances was one of the things that we all discussed. Is it worded in the ordinance any certain way?
Is it worded in the ordinance that created the committee? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. About reviewing city code. I don't know why I thought there was something in there.
Yeah, there is. That was under one of the purposes. That was
How
the
was it worded?
purpose. The purpose and objectives of the committee section on the ordinance is pretty lengthy. And give me a second.
I have it here. Review the city code for the purpose of making recommendations to the mayor and city council for suggested changes and modification to the city code. So it was very specific to code.
But that was one of many things.
Yeah.
And I know that came about for like it was literally because of that ordinance that me and April were talking about earlier. That was we were like, oh, well, if there's one outdated ordinance, then there's probably more. But I just wanted to hear how it was worded. I like adding the other things to it. I think it's a little more overreach, like reaching everything.
And this is maybe a tack on to your point, Jess, about sports and those kind of things. Our role would also be to provide consultation to other committees. So my guess is that that's the purview of the Parks and Rec Committee, but when they need help looking at diversity issues, they should come to us for consultation. So, and I don't know if we need to capture that in one of these, 8 sections in some way. And maybe it's part of the 8th one, because it's,
I don't know if I have a bunch of faith that they would come to us. I think part of our goal is to be the ones who point it out and bring it to them.
I like how that's worded though, as an option of saying, we're here for you. Because I think one of the things that we had discussed, like different languages and stuff, these might be things to start with that we get volunteers. You know what I mean? That say, okay, well, I could take this flyer and I could translate it into this, or we could get volunteers to do these types of things. And we could say to other committees, like, we have someone that's willing to do this. If you want to come to us, if you want to give it to us, we can help you. So I kind of like that wording.
Or in general, leaving it open-ended. Like if you guys feel you need help with something that falls into this purview, like please reach out to us.
Well, things that we will do and things we can assist with, I think covers that. Like assist with, I don't know, programming to me opens it up to a whole new world of things.
My other thought was we could, if we wanted to make it more broad, to review the city code, policies, programming, and other activities, and make recommendations and modifications.
I mean, I really think programming is going to encompass like pretty much all of the
encompassing.
Things.
Okay.
Yeah, because the programming would be provided by the library, by the Parks and Rec Department, by, I would put pretty much everything else under programming.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Code and policy differ how?
Like, for example, hiring practices and HR manual, for example, is not going to be a city code. I'm just going to toss this out there, like in section, and I don't mean to leave this section, but like in section 5, it could say to provide recommendations and information to the city council and its committees that would identify blah, 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 blah. And then that way committees know that, we're there to provide recommendations. If we see a disparity in Parks and Rec, we have to call that out, you know, we have to, but we're also available for consultation and to be a resource like in the next one.
I really like that line of thinking.
I like that too. Do we need to put boards and committees just because we have some that are committees and some that are boards? So I think the Parks and Rec is actually considered a board. I'm not quite sure even what the difference is, but.
Okay. Was there
I think it's the same thing in 6. I don't know if we need to reorder that or take an and out or right to serve as a resource for the community government and its boards and committees and the community by providing information and facilitating communication to better understand and celebrate our differences. I don't know, something about it seems.
So to serve as a resource for the city government, comma, the city government and its boards, comma, committees, and the community. We just have too many ends.
I think I did a bad copy paste, but is this better?
Oh, because boards and committees we have boards and committees, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you need that last comma. Maybe is that your last piece there?
No, we don't. Okay. Any questions, comments, or concerns about 5, 6, or 7?
I think there needs to be a comma after community.
There, it does.
Okay.
Oh, after community?
To serve as a resource for the government, its boards and committees, and the community, comma, by providing information and facilitating communication.
Yeah. Okay. Any final thoughts regarding 6 or 7? Okay. Moving to section 8, it just says to perform other related duties as directed by the mayor or the city council. Could boards or committees provide direction to us is my other question. Could they assign us duties? No.
Well, I think that's kind of what we were discussing previously, right? Is that we're opening up the door and kind of letting them know, like, come to us if you need to.
Well, then they would need to be included in section 8, the boards and committees.
So I don't think they can assign us work.
Or
they can seek consultation from us, but I don't want to be doing the parks. And
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I think that number 8 is enough. Because I think we talk about just providing consultation up above, and then we get our marching orders from the mayor and city council.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Any questions, comments, concerns on section 8? Okay. Article 5, we're heading into membership. So section 1 under membership states that the EIC shall have 9 members. To be eligible to be appointed, members shall reside or own property, own a business or work within the city limits. as much as possible, the members of the EIC shall be varied in experience and representative of the whole city as a whole.
So this is the part that we have to change because that's not how it's written in the ordinance.
Okay.
We can amend it later, but I would suggest not doing that. We have our committee set for a full year as is. So I would suggest maybe not amending that yet. I mean, yes, we have to change it in here now, but if we want to change it to include people who own a business or work within the city later, we can do it later.
Yeah, we would have to amend the ordinance, which doesn't
Yes,
do anything.
that's what I'm
for
trying to
us now.
say. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, which, I don't think we should, even if that's something we want to do, I don't think we should do that right now.
I mean, yeah, it's not a priority now. We already have our set group and
Yeah.
well, hopefully we get two more or another member, one more.
So to be
Two more.
in, with the ordinance, we take out this piece that says or own property.
Yes. So members shall reside within the city limits.
And don't forget,
I
like
just
if we
want to
need,
speak
oh, go
to
ahead.
this. I just want to speak to the second part, which says, as much as possible, the members of the EIC shall be varied in experience and representative of the city as a whole, which is great. And we can work on recruiting members as our seats are coming up if we're not going to do it again. I will tell you, because I did have some comments on this. We discussed before this happened, how could we ensure that the Equity and Inclusion Committee was actually diverse? And what we found was if we in any way tried to define that, the list itself would be exclusionary. So the decision was made that each person on their own separately, each council member and then the mayor elected someone who had applied. And we did not talk to each other to say, oh, do you have a person of this age, or do you have a person of this race, or do you have a person with this experience, or someone who identifies like that? None of that happened, because if we were to do that, that practice in and of itself would be exclusionary. So speaking to you guys about that, and to everyone who may be watching it that have some concerns about that, that's why we didn't do it.
Okay. I was going to add also, so we have the ability, like any other, like city council, if they are discussing a certain issue and it pertains to somebody in the city who isn't on city council, inviting them in to talk about that topic. So if we were, discussing housing and the houseless community in North Kansas City, and we wanted to call Rita Pierce to come and kind of educate us or give us some more information about that, like we always have that ability. And this was discussed like prior to the creation.
Absolutely.
Of the committee.
And it doesn't mean that we can't work with business owners or other people in the community as well. We totally can. But as far as who's
Probably
eligible
should,
to be a
if we're-
member, it has to be a resident at this time.
And-
Anything else that anyone would like to ask or add about that?
Just maybe a little bit of clarity, and I understand the exclusionary part and the intention.
Mhm.
Is there a way that we can say, and maybe it's just strengthening the sentence a little bit or making it a little bit more intentional, that the members of the EIC shall be a diverse representation of our city's residents, or something like that, that's a little bit, it's a little bit broader. It helps kind of get to that diversity piece, and that it's not just a committee of majority folks. So I don't know. I kind of have, a little bit of mixed feelings about this part, and I understand the why.
Mhm. And something else that we can keep in mind is diversity isn't always something you can see. I mean, we already talked about what diversity means. So I think we can put that in there. I'm just saying we couldn't say I don't know. When it comes down to actually filling the spots, there isn't like a checklist or a quota or something that we would be able to use in that way. But as we begin our work, I think we're going to find people in the community that are passionate and involved, and those would be the natural people to come and replace us as people cycle out or move past this point.
I also think when we're talking about recruiting like diverse individuals, again, like Lisa said, since there was a little bit, I noticed when we were doing things over the summer, as far as the people of North Kansas City thing, when we said the word diversity, people didn't quite understand like what all that included. But as Lisa was saying, like we can essentially work, never mind. Sorry, guys. I just got off track there. Just forget what I'm saying.
I mean, I think that can be added. The statement can be added.
I guess what I was saying, basically at some point in time when we address other city practices as far as hiring and fire, like I think in a lot of the research that I did, you're going to find that most of the ways to reach a diverse group of individuals is by ensuring that the communication is solid between the city and the people. So I don't know if we need to include that, because we are also going to be addressing it in other things that we do. So we will be kind of reviewing like the policies and the hiring practices. And when it comes to that, like as Lisa's saying, like we hit a legal issue with being too specific versus just later on making sure that when we discuss like hiring practices that we are hitting the point of making sure that it's properly communicated, maybe in multiple languages, et cetera, in an inclusive and equitable manner to every single person in the committee, so that we are, or in the community, so we're making sure that everybody is aware that these positions exist. Like I think that's important, and I've heard a little bit of that from people, like, oh, like I didn't even know there was a position available on the whatever committee, or so I don't know if we need to necessarily include it, because it is something that we will be focusing on later, but correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure.
So can I clarify?
I think in a moment, we're going to be talking about recruitment. So we might want to just table this, but Tara, I'm so sorry I cut you off.
No, that's okay. Are we discussing if we want to even have that line in there about varied in experience and representative of the city as a whole? Is that in question? Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was on the same page. I think it's, in my opinion, I think it's everything that we're doing is working towards that. I don't know if we need to necessarily call it out under membership.
But if we do, I don't hate the way Gabriella worded it. I preferred the way she worded it.
Yeah.
We're talking
Say it again, Gabriella.
You're muted.
Sorry. I think we take out the kind of wishy-washy as much as possible and just say the members of the EIC shall be varied in experience and a diverse representation of our city's residents, or something like that.
So like a diverse representation of the community at large, or
yeah,
a reflection of the community, an accurate reflection of the community.
Can we as a committee though guarantee that under our membership based on how we're appointed?
Clarify what you mean. Like
we can say that we want membership to be varied in experience as a committee, but we actually don't have a ton of control in who is actually being appointed.
So I think, so at the beginning of the whole creation of the committee, I was under the impression that it was our goal, Lisa Bryant, to create a separate application process for the committee itself that is not the same standard application process for every board and committee in the city. And I genuinely think that in doing so, it would just provide so like to answer your question, no, I don't think we can dictate what we want to see and have that be a reality. But if we were to create a separate application for this committee, it would at least inform the council members who are making those decisions a little better, like more specifically. So if you had specific experience in diversity, equity, and inclusion, like that would be awesome. And I feel that would probably be important to a council member.
Yeah.
I kind of remember now reading that earlier when I was reading through the document. Do we address this there then versus under the actual makeup of the committee?
I don't know. And then I had another question, just kind of, I don't know what you said that reminded me of it, but for Eric, Lisa, I don't really know which one of you, but do we need to include, because I know I was actually just rewatching some of that city council meeting where we were discussing membership, and do we need to include somewhere that we want to ensure that we are attempting at least to recruit underheard voices, so people who have not actively been involved in the community, like going forward? Should we clarify that somehow? I know Tony clarified it in his responses to applicants, but should we?
I think that would be the appropriate place to do it.
In membership?
No, I don't think I would put that in this document. I think, like you were saying, if we wanted to change something in the application or in the guidance for interviewing applicants, however you wanted to do that, I don't think it would be in, I personally don't think it would be in this document.
And I think it would fall under that last section in Article 4 about, advising, or however it was worded, the other committees and programs and all that.
And part of what we say we're going to do is to do community outreach so that we can reach people that aren't currently involved in things that are happening in the community. And I really feel like this committee will grow and change organically in that way. But I'm not sure it's something we can put into these bylaws. The part that's highlighted underneath, it said potentially 10. I think you would include a city council liaison and a staff representative.
Yes, and then I think Eric also clarified for us that like we could not technically consider you a member, and I think I also kind of asked you about that. Like we can't. You aren't technically.
We're going to get. Yeah, I'm going to get down. We're going to get down to voting. Who's a voting member? And there are some committees where the city council liaison is a voting member. My recommendation would be that the city council liaison is not a voting member. You're going to be bringing items in front of the city council, which would be an appropriate place for someone in my position, I think, to vote on it at that time.
And what were you saying about like we can be like, you're not in this? What you worded it.
Yeah, I mean, I could still. Basically, if somebody in my position can be as involved as the committee wants me to be. So I could sit here and collaborate with you, or there could be a point where you say, okay, this is a discussion for voting members, at which case I am not part of that discussion. And that would be, I mean, up to you guys. You always have that right. I'll never be offended. But I would definitely not make my recommendation would be to not make my position a voting member. That doesn't mean I can't collaborate when the committee desires that.
This is Eric, if I may. As reading the ordinance, I do not believe the council member would be a voting member.
Okay, so that settles it.
So as far as updating language, what do I need to change or add?
Eric, we would still say that there would be a city council liaison and a representative from staff, right?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Okay, so then I need to add that shall have 9 members here. Would that make the most sense?
I would think maybe at the end, you would say the committee will also include a city council liaison and a member of city staff.
So I know I'm jumping ahead, but are we removing then from the next section, which has officers listed, city council liaison and staff? Because that's, I think, where we plugged you guys in.
Oh, yeah, that's fine too.
It's down, I think it's under officers.
Yeah, that's fine.
I thought it was somewhere, but I could
I
not.
know. I had to go look at it, but yeah.
Thanks, Jess. So then it also sounds like we don't need this piece that we
Nope.
were thinking about because we've already clarified it.
Yes, correct.
I'll go ahead and clear that.
All right. Any questions, comments, or concerns further on section 1 of Article 5 membership? No? Okay. So we'll move to section 2. Section 2 talks about the members again, of course, but it says members shall be appointed for a 2-year term for a maximum of 3 terms by members of the city council and the mayor, then confirmed by city council. In parentheses, we have members shall be selected after an open, well-publicized application and interview process.
The only special circumstance is that some of you are starting off on a 1-year term, which means that instead of having a total of 6 years, it would be a total of 5 years. Are you okay with that? Or do you want to add a special circumstance line in there?
How would that read? It's a special circumstance. How would that read? Sorry.
Well, we
Well, you
have
could
4
say-
of you.
Yeah, you could say something like, for a total of 6 years or something like that.
Yeah,
you know.
because you're going to be either 5 or 7.
Mhm. But that
As a
only
max.
applies to us first, this first group of us. So
And
like,
only half of you.
Could
Yeah.
you put that down in the next one where it talks about the first appointments?
Yeah, probably.
And just, we can, I don't have a strong preference on, I mean, if it's, since I'm one of the ones that would be a 5-year instead of a 6-year potentially, that doesn't,
Mhm.
I don't have a strong preference on that being shorter if it were to be that.
And I know this is a technicality, but our numbering's off in this section.
Uh-oh.
Oh yeah, 1, 2, it goes to 4. So good catch, Gabriella.
I told you guys I was good at proofreading, but not at wordsmithing.
Nope, I love it. Okay, so we're moving that down to 4. So then we're still on section 2.
Yeah.
And do we need to leave that little portion in quotations, or did we have that in quotation, or sorry, in parentheses so that we could discuss it?
I
Is that-
don't remember why it was in parentheses.
Hmm.
But if you guys want me to take out parentheses, I absolutely can.
I just don't remember why we did that.
Is it somewhere else? And I can't remember. Is it farther down, just what you mentioned about the application process? Or was this the part you were talking about?
No, I don't think we put anything in. So
I think this is the sentence about the application process.
yes. And then if we wanted to get more specific with that, we would have to. But I was talking about in particular that when the committee was just like an idea and we were talking about it, like that was kind of what I would have liked to see, was that the application for this committee was different than all of the other ones, like more specific.
Is that something that we would want to potentially put into the strategic plan versus in the bylaws?
Mhm. And as far as the bylaws, yeah, I think that's all we said about it, was just to make sure that it was an open and well-publicized application and interview process.
Yeah, I think it's good to take it out of the parentheses and kind of include it then.
And I think that's just for like maximum transparency.
Yeah. With the expectation of what we're wanting to do. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions, comments, concern on section 2? No, sorry, ladies, I thought we were making more edits. Okay, so section 3 reads, the first appointments to the EIC shall be staggered. The purpose of this is to give positions varying renewal years, so the terms for the EIC membership do not expire at the same time. After the initial founding appointment, all future appointments shall be for a 2-year term. That's good to go?
I think that's pretty clear. Yep.
Okay. Section 4, regular meeting attendance is a requirement for all committee members. Any member who accrues 3 or more unexcused absences in a calendar year, or a combination of excused or unexcused absences for 50% or more of regular meetings in a calendar year, may be removed by the committee, staff, or city liaison by vote subject to the confirmation of the council. This is something we definitely need to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Being that right now we're meeting once a month unless we call a special meeting. We are looking for input on this portion because things happen. But if you're missing a significant portion of our meetings, the concern was how much of your input is being, how much are we really getting done and how much are you benefiting the committee? Thoughts on that?
I don't have thoughts on this first piece, but I think the language in parentheses here might need to be clarified because right now it looks like either the committee or the staff member or the council liaison could propose the removal. And I don't know if that's the intention of this, but that's how it reads to me.
No, I think we originally did it that way so that we would discuss that issue in parentheses. So we would decide how, like, what is the method of removal? That I think that's why it says discuss after.
I mean, I think we just, in the previous conversation, I think we clarified that the only way someone could be removed is by vote of the committee, which does not include staff or city liaison, since they're not
Correct.
voting.
Okay.
We're not voting members.
I agree with it being committee.
Maybe removed.
And then should I clarify that this is confirmation of the city council?
Do we need that? So does the city council have to approve our decision? Do we know?
I mean, it would change committee members.
Well,
So-
because then it would be upon you guys to either pick a new committee, like to fill that position, or we risk like falling below 5 members, in which case we would not be able to make any actual decisions.
Yeah, I am honestly not aware of this being in any other bylaws. Did you? I looked at that library one. I'm not sure.
This is Eric. I do think the park board has something like this in their bylaws. I'm sorry, I
You
don't.
do, okay.
I like the idea of having it, just my 2 cents, subject to the confirmation of the city council.
Okay.
I certainly don't want staff involved in any decision to remove anybody from the committee, but I think it's a good idea to have the committee make that recommendation to the city council and have the city council confirm it.
Okay.
I agree.
And it's very specific reasons. Like, it's not like if you are sick or your child's sick, or it's just that there's only 12 meetings right now in a year. And if you've missed 6 of them, then that is like kind of a position in which somebody else could be actually actively inputting. So it's not,
Right.
I'm genuinely hoping we would never have to do that, but
No. I would say you'd be more likely of getting a letter of resignation if somebody moved or something, in which case it would be the same process of going through city council, but. So yeah, definitely not us.
do we
saying-
need to put that then, do we need to clarify then that city council would be appointing a new member? Or is that just assumed?
Yeah, I think because how we get new members is already defined. I think confirmation of the city council would cover it.
Okay.
Committee vote subject to confirmation.
Well, see, I don't know if that's, so Bryant was explaining to me that essentially in running, so if you hold a different position in the city, so if I were to run or whatever, I would have to resign, but then he said technically you appoint your new, you appoint the person who replaces you. So that
Yeah.
wouldn't go through council. So that's what I mean. So do we,
Well, it still would. I mean, you would appoint the person and that person still has to be confirmed by council, just as you all were.
okay. So then we can just leave it as is.
Mhm.
Okay.
We can go, I think, go ahead and remove the parentheses. Yep. Calendar year. Do we need to put something like offending member may be removed by the committee, or offending member sounds aggressive? I don't know.
Truant or delinquent.
I know they all sound so like abrasive. Member in question may be removed.
Member in question.
Said member.
Yeah, said member. I like these. These are a little less aggressive.
We go.
Like it.
We go. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns, section 4.
I like it.
All right. We're locking it in. Let's go section 5. We made define ex officio. Sorry.
So I think we can just get rid of that. We can't add extra members. We've established, Eric said, and essentially, so I think in discussing it, like Eric said, we can't do that. It's not in the bylaws or in the ordinance. But like I said earlier, like one, we could amend that in the future, like Lisa was saying about we could amend the ordinance. But more importantly, anytime we need somebody or we need input from somebody, like we have the ability to reach out to them and kind of invite them into the meeting. They wouldn't have a voting, any sort of vote, but they would still be able to provide us with information.
Well, all right then. So that removes 5 and 6. We can't have alternate members either, right?
I don't know about that. Can we, Eric?
Not in the ordinance, so I would say no, not until the ordinance is changed.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, that is section 5 on membership. Good work. The next section is section 6 on officers. Section 1. So I know that this was temporary. So it says the officers of the EIC shall be 2 co-chairs and secretaries.
Mm-hmm.
We're keeping that for now, but can amend it later. Is that mine?
No, I still like that idea. I think all we were figuring out later was like a process to select these individuals.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think originally the idea was wait until we figure out how people are voting. So once you made the rules on voting, then you could make it official. My question would be, do you want going forward for there to always be co-chairs?
I like the co-chairs. I think it's a balance of power.
Okay, good. I'm just checking.
But I don't know anybody else.
This is maybe a question, it might be for Eric, but do we need to spell it out? Like if one of our co-chairs is absent, can the other co-chair preside over the meeting without them? Is that something we need to address?
I think that's entirely up to you and your bylaws. I don't know, if you need to address it in your bylaws or if you just want to sort of see how things go, but I don't think it's a matter that the city government has an opinion on.
And I sort of think that was the purpose by design, right? So if for some reason Bess was sick, then we have, Brandy to oversee the meeting, prepare the agenda. It just kind of made it easier. Mm-hmm. So kind of like a shared responsibility too, even if it's not specifically related to being at the meeting, but Bess planned to get the agenda ready and send it out. But unfortunately, all these other things came up. Like she has Brandy to fall back on who can then do it, or vice versa. So I mean, I would think it was implied maybe that that's how it works. Like, I don't think we need both of them to proceed.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay.
Okay.
Moving forward to section 2. Any other questions about section 1? Comments, concerns, any of that? Okay. Section 2, the chair shall preside at all regular meetings, call special meetings as deemed necessary, and be responsible for preparing the agenda for meetings with the assistance of the city staff council liaison. This has a question mark because we would like to discuss this. I don't know what our question was. I don't know if it was, can the city staff or council liaison help us in this with the agenda preparation, or how can we?
I just assumed when I read it that we have to have their help to get it loaded and to get it, you know, the Zoom links and all of those. That's how I read it. Like, we can't.
That's how I read it as well. And so that the agenda was posted publicly ahead of time.
Okay, so I see that's the capacity. Okay, that makes sense. Is there anything you need to add or amend in this section?
And I think also part of the question was like, who is the person who does that? So is it going to be you, Lisa, or Eric? And I think it's Eric that we send everything to.
Yes.
So we might not have to include the council liaison in that.
Okay.
I suggest you leave that wording in,
You suggest we do? Okay.
just because she might be able to assist with the content, but certainly we'll handle the posting and the meetings and that sort of thing.
Okay.
That was my question. I didn't know if she could help us if we needed help with content too.
Do we want to say for preparing and posting the agenda for meetings then?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions, comments, concerns on section 2? Okay. Section 3, the secretary shall record the minutes of each regular meeting and prepare written minutes to be given to the EIC city staff liaison at within what time limit prior to the next regularly scheduled EIC meeting? 24 to 48 hours? What are we thinking here?
Yeah, I think that was in there for Eric, actually. Like, is there a specific time limit in which all of that needs to be to you, or just before the meeting?
Well, so we have to post meetings no less than 24 hours ahead of time, but it would be helpful if we could get these. Let's say if you have your meetings on Thursday, it would maybe be helpful if we had them by close of business Monday, before the Monday before the meeting. Would that be acceptable?
Yeah, and I think this one specifically, they're asking about minutes, like how I got you the minutes super late, which would be unacceptable because I got them out last night. So how soon after the meeting? I wouldn't want to tie anybody's hands by saying 48 hours after the meeting, you'll have the minutes typed. I know for me, sometimes I need the weekend, which it's Thursday, so it would be the weekend, but.
And from Steph's viewpoint, if you could get them to us 3 days before your meeting, which would be the Monday, close of business Monday before the Thursday meeting, that would give us time to, take whatever agenda you've developed and include the minutes with it and get it out to you about 3 days ahead of time. So that's what I would suggest. The close of business Monday or 3 days prior to, in case you ever change your meeting date, 3 days prior to the regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay.
I'm going to run to the restroom. I'll be right back.
Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns for section 3? Nope. Should we pause for Lisa or keep moving forward?
This one we have to decide on. So let's go ahead and just read through the section 5 election of officers.
Okay. So section 5 election of officers. A.
Our numbering's off again, guys.
We don't know how to number.
Section 4. Oh, wait, is it section or is it article?
In the sections, it goes from section 3 to section 5.
Okay, I see. So section 4, election of officers. So election process, this is what we have so far. At the first meeting of a new calendar year, the EIC will elect officers. Nominations shall come from the EIC members. The officers shall be elected in order of co-chairs and then secretaries. In the event of a tie vote, one revote shall take place among the tied vote receivers. In the event of a second tie, the office shall be decided by a flip of a coin or city council liaison. That's in question because we want to know what the options are. The
How do
election,
you want to break a tie?
yeah. The election process shall be administered at the meeting by the city staff liaison.
So city council liaison can't vote, so that would be out.
Okay. So it'll be a flip of a coin.
This was another one where we didn't know the best protocol or what other boards and committees do. So Eric, any guidance on this from historical knowledge would be really helpful, or historical knowledge from other organizations and jobs we're a part of would be helpful as well.
I don't know of any other committee that has co-chairs or anything. I don't know that this is addressed in the bylaws of any committee, so I think you can do it in any way that you deem proper.
So in other committees, how do they choose a chair? Just somebody throws it out there, they say yes?
Yeah, I think there's a motion and a vote, and if it's, whoever wins the majority vote is the chair. So I don't know of any. There aren't that many city committees that even have bylaws, to be perfectly honest. So I don't think the idea of a tie has been addressed in any other bylaws. So I think it's you can decide on any method you like.
All right. Who's for drawing straws, guys? No, I'm just kidding.
Will we run into a tie that much, do you think, if you're voting and it's just could it be the top two people, and if you have a tie at the top, those two are the chairs? I guess if you had a tie at the 2 and 3 though.
So I guess what the process would be, like, I think that Brandy should be a chair, and then we're like, okay, cool, so Brandy's in the mix, and then we all just vote for whoever. So are we all essentially, like, is this like a selection process where we would all put somebody in, or like how does this work? Is this just one of us saying, like, so I think Tara, I think you'd be a great chair, so then now Tara's in the running for a chairperson, or is this somebody putting themselves in it?
I almost wonder if it needs to be self-selection, because it's extra above and beyond what you've committed to be on when you were initially nominated.
That's what I was thinking.
Someone can approve their self-selection or something, but I don't know if someone else has other thoughts.
So then does it need to read something more like nominations shall come from EIC members and, like, I don't know, with the consent of the nominated person? Is that what you're referring to, Tara? So that we can make sure, like, if I think someone would be better for the job than me, I would love to nominate someone, but they have to consent to being elected into that position.
Yeah, or it could be an either or. I mean, if someone wants to step forward as a chair and volunteer, does it have to be that they have to be nominated by someone else before I would say I'm interested in being chair?
Okay.
Got it.
I don't know if anyone else has a preference or a strong opinion on that.
I think it could go either way, honestly. if you want to nominate, if you want to self-select, either way. But somebody can always say no to a nomination if somebody nominates them. Be like, no, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
But also, if you want to be like, no, I think I'd be great for this job, then you also could throw yourself in there. I don't know.
Does
I think
that,
if you just say
cover it?
self-nominations are acceptable, right, is what you're saying.
Mhm.
But also I can nominate Jess with her consent. So you have two options.
Yeah, and I think Tara's saying like it's above and beyond the Call of Duty. Like when you signed up for this committee, you didn't necessarily sign up to hold a like official or like that kind of position. You signed up to be a contributing member. Anything else, then yes, you would want to agree
So
to
the
make sure you have
consent
the
piece.
time to do it. Things like that.
With the consent of the nominee.
That's not how you spell it. Sorry, guys.
I think it's Nominee, I think.
Yep. I just forgot to delete everything I needed to. Okay. How does that read?
Election process. At the first meeting of a new calendar year, the EIC will elect officers. Self-nominations and nominations with consent of the nominee shall come from the EIC members. The officers shall be elected in order of co-chairs and then secretary. In the event of a tie vote, one revote shall take place among the tied vote receivers. In the event of a second tie, the office shall be decided by a flip of a coin. The election process shall be administered at the meeting by the city staff liaison. Questions, comments, concerns, amendments?
I would just say in general, I'm probably more involved with the discussions and stuff. If you want to say the city council liaison
Okay.
or either or,
City
like
council
if you wanted me to run it, I'm not a voting member. I can
Oh.
run it for you.
would do it. Yeah.
So instead of staff, say council, or either leave it as either or put it as either or.
Yeah, totally up to you. You can put it as both, but I would include me if you could as an option.
All right. How's that look? Any further amendments, questions, comments, concerns? No? All right, moving on to section B or part B. This is term. All officers are elected to serve a term that ends on the last day of that calendar year, January 1 through December 31. I think this is pretty good. I don't know if we need to make any amendments, changes, or anything, Lisa, or?
I think that's good.
Okay. All right. Part C, vacancy. If an officer position becomes vacant during the year, the EIC shall hold a vote on a replacement at the next regularly scheduled meeting. The newly elected officer shall complete the term of the existing vacancy. Questions, comments, concerns? That's pretty straightforward.
I think I would add something about, after being confirmed by city council, the newly elected officer would complete the term of the existing vacancy.
My question relates to term limit of officer. Like, is it just once and done? That's all you get? Or is there, you can re-up for another year as an officer?
For the replacement officer or just in general?
I'm not for the replacement, for the term of the officer. So can someone who's sitting in a 2-year term do 2 years as co-chair?
Oh, so term for officers, got it.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to do a multiple year term, especially if someone is doing a great job and enjoys it.
Yeah.
Because it is above and beyond. We may not have being up to 9 people. You could run through officers pretty quickly.
Mhm.
Okay.
So then do we need to change any language for Part B, the term?
I think we need to add,
Uh-huh.
so a
So
term-
something simple like officers can be reelected for a second 1-year term. Or as many as you guys feel.
Yeah, maybe it's just that with no term, officer term limits or,
Mhm.
Just as long as you re-vote on it every year, is that what you mean?
yeah.
my other question though for that piece, I know that Jessica had mentioned previously that never mind.
Does that cover the language you guys want to include, that sentence? Also, I don't know what to do grammatically with like this piece right here. So any guidance would be great.
A term is defined from January 1st to December 31st. Is that right? Sounds okay, but I don't know.
We'll make that work for now.
Any questions, comments, concerns, further review on B?
We could also do a term as defined, well, we already said that, calendar year. Term is defined as a calendar year from January 1st to December 31st.
Okay. Okay. We good here? All right.
Sorry, I'm not. So if this reads, that means that someone, if they would like to, could be a chair for 6 years.
Yes, but they would be voted on every year.
So they'd have to run again each time.
I feel like that's just a really long time for a person to remain as chair.
It would be if it's voted on though, and there's
Yeah.
an issue. I would just be concerned of having a term limit and then not having enough people to fill a chair position. Because that won't be for everyone.
Yeah, I just think that, I don't know, if everyone's fine with it, I can definitely rally. I would just.
You want to set a term limit at like 3 years or something like that so that it doesn't stay. But I get what Tara's saying, I get, which is
There are
if
only
you
9
put a term
people.
limit that
Like, and we
Yeah.
only have 7 people right now, and 3 of
Mhm.
us are a chair position. And if
Mhm.
we're all here again next year and we can't have, it's fine for the first few years.
I think if there was an issue of somebody being a chair that maybe shouldn't be anymore, then the
They would be.
opportunity is there every year to not vote for that person.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I see where you're coming from, because I had that same concern just in general as a being on the committee and having term limits. But with us having some power in that, and with vote on the committee from the committee is a little bit different.
Yeah, I can rally. That would be my one concern is that, and I guess with 2 people, it makes it a little bit better. All right, I'll rally. Sorry, guys.
Well, if you had, like, if you were to do some sort of a limit, could it be something where, you know, if you've done it for 2 years, you have to take a year off and then you could be back on the year after that, or?
Yeah, I was thinking if 4 terms would be 2/3 of the maximum term you could serve on the committee anyway. Is what just a number I was throwing out, but I think any number that I come up with would likely be arbitrary. So if people are comfortable with this, I'm absolutely fine to move on. We don't need to discuss it any longer.
I think
Okay, let's go ahead and
everybody's
move on.
probably tired.
Yeah.
The juices are dying, all of the, we're on fumes now, so.
We are 3 out of 4 pages done, so it's actually going to bring that up. It's after 9 o'clock. I was thinking maybe we had a question about contact, although we can do that at a different time. We could email out thoughts. I guess we couldn't do that.
Can we do that? Yeah.
Well, we only got we have a page left, right?
Huh?
We have a page left. It looks like it's just a page.
Yes. We've done 3 out of 4 pages.
Y'all ready to, y'all want to call another meeting?
I was gonna say we could table it and call a meeting for like Monday or something just to finish, or I think we can't do it for tomorrow because that's not enough time. But basically whatever day works for us if we wanted to do that, if we're all kind of losing steam.
Well, I was really more concerned with keeping city staff on too long, but it may be easier than, I guess, to finish than to call another meeting.
I think that is important to get to because it will be how we run our meetings.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
We leave it up to Eric and Stephen.
We'll be here as long as you tell us to be.
Do we want to at least get to the parts that are in question
Let's try to move. Yeah.
of the ones that you wanted to discuss, and then
Or how you run the meeting. I think we can keep going. If it's how you run the meeting, hopefully they're all pretty quick decisions. Go ahead.
Okay. So we're at what's this, Article 6?
Let's go ahead and does anyone have any concerns about the vacancy piece?
That's right.
I do, if this is Eric, I do, if you don't mind. So that's specifically spoken to in the ordinance. So I really think I would suggest you replace that wording or delete it altogether. But the wording in the ordinance is a committee vacancy shall be filled for the unexpired portion of the member's term as soon as practical through a process substantially similar to the process used for the original appointments. So I don't think that the committee itself can vote on a replacement.
But that's not for a member. We're talking about a vacancy of an officer.
Oh, I apologize. I see what you're saying. So I withdraw my comment.
Okay.
But it's a good point. Do we need to make sure that language is up in the member section? Do we need to mimic the language from the ordinance in the member section? Not that I want to go back to page 2, but maybe we can just put a comment there and say, go
so
back
my
to.
understanding from what Eric sent us is that our bylaws can't supersede the ordinance. So if it's in the ordinance, it would maybe be redundant to include it in the bylaws. It's already spoken for.
Okay.
Great. So then as far as how the vacancy runs for an officer's position, any changes to make there?
I like it. I think it works.
does the officer need to be confirmed by city council? Do the chairs and the secretary?
I don't think so.
That's what I was looking at. I don't think so either.
And
We have
that's, yeah,
after
that
being
was,
confirmed.
I made that mistake when I suggested that. I was still thinking members.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Okay, then I think language-wise, we don't need to update.
Under the vacancy part, we'd have to take out,
Take out after confirmed by city council. And it would just be the newly elected officer shall complete the term of the existing vacancy.
Okay, perfect.
Questions, comments, concerns on C? Okay. I'm gonna move on to city liaisons. Were there any questions that we needed to address there? Okay, so then we'll just read each section and we'll go through and read the whole thing. And then if there's questions, comments, we can address those as this whole section. So section 1 reads, the mayor shall assign a city employee as a staff liaison to the committee. The staff liaison shall ensure committee notices, agendas, and minutes of all committee meetings are prepared, published, and maintained as part of the city's records. Section 2 reads, the staff liaison is not a member or an officer of the board. Section 3, the city council shall appoint a council liaison to serve as a resource and a bridge between city council and the committee. And then section 4, the council liaison is a member of the committee with no voting power. Questions, comments, concerns on any of that section at all? Gabriella, you look like you're thinking.
Yeah. And just for the official record, please call me Gabby, please,
Oh,
please.
sorry.
Okay.
I just wanted to call out that in section 2, we're not a board, we are a committee.
Ah.
So, okay. So just that consistency. Thanks.
This is Eric, if I may. Again, in the ordinance, and it does read, in consultation with regard to the staff liaison, in consultation with the mayor, the city administrator shall assign a city employee as a staff liaison to the committee. So I would request that substitution. I can read that again if you like.
That'd be great.
In consultation with the mayor, the city administrator shall assign a city employee as a staff liaison to the committee.
Perfect. I got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Oops. All right, guys, we're moving.
Okay, anything else regarding the city liaison? All right, then we're gonna move forward to Article 8. Section 1, the regular meeting of the EIC shall be held monthly. In question is bi-monthly. Do we want to meet twice a month or just once? And then on the first Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. Each meeting of the EIC shall be conducted as a public meeting. In the section under that, we can, is there any questions on section 1? Any
So the
amendments?
decision point here would be, do we want to do more often than once a month?
Mhm.
So new.
I think we kind of talked about this last time, and we should do special meetings as needed, but keep them monthly because that's what that's what the commitment was when we all applied, and just for consistency.
Lisa, what were you talking about as far as, is Lisa on? Why do I not?
Yeah, I'm
see?
on.
All right.
Yep.
As far as work sessions?
That's that's separate. I was just talking about how the city council meetings, sometimes we have work sessions prior. And then when I started thinking about it, all of our meetings are going to be kind of work sessions, I think. So I kind of thought myself in a complete circle about that.
Oh, no, I remember what it was. Subcommittees.
Yeah.
That
So
we could essentially do subcommittees for things that we're trying to get done. Because
yeah, what I was thinking through is like for city council, the city is providing the information that we're going to be talking about, right? But we're going to be generating our own agenda, information, outreach, whatever we're doing. So in order to work on that and not continue to meet as frequently as we would need to do to get any movement on that, we might need subcommittees that are made of 3 people or less. Like if we had 2 like-minded people that were really passionate about working on something, they could work on that outside of the committee and bring updates to the committee. It was just an idea that I had, because otherwise, like, we have to be generating the focus and the drive here. And if we wait until we're meeting monthly, we may not move forward. So subcommittees might be necessary to get real work done.
I
and
like
we
that
would re-
because
Go ahead.
no, I like that idea because then it's a little bit more informal, and then the subcommittee is flexible on when they can meet and kind of meet on their own time versus structured and having to put out, meeting minutes and agendas and things like that twice a month.
And then repeat back to the committee at large, and then that would all
Yeah.
be.
And we can get more done. So we could
Yeah.
establish.
I
what
was
we're
just trying to
working
think
on.
through how could we actually get work done? And I don't think it's meeting once a month. So that was what I had thought through as a possibility.
And I really loved the subcommittee's idea that we could essentially work on our own in small groups. And
That
then
requires
Have to spell that out in this meeting section. Like, do we have to add a section 5 or something that just says, subcommittees may be established, by direction of the committee and groups smaller than 3 or something like that. Like, I don't know if that's, we have to just spell it out that way.
I guess I should ask just to make sure that my thinking is accurate on that. If we had a subcommittee that was working on something that was fewer than 3 people, that's fine, right?
That would be within the Open Meetings Act, yes.
Okay.
It's the
I just
same
wanted
as
to
us
make
working
sure.
on the bylaws.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure before, because subcommittee sounds a little bit formal, so I just wanted to make sure I was right about that. But that was my thought process.
Isn't this already in section 2? Like just down below? What you're adding up here in section 1?
I didn't see it in section 2, so that's fine. I can delete.
Special meetings
then-
may be held as
Oh, yeah.
necessary. Yeah, okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Do we need to include the attendance piece knowing that it's included above?
No, it's already in the membership part.
Great.
Okay, the next, questions, comments, concerns for the rest of the section 1 part. All right, section 2, special meetings may be held as needed. If necessary, a subcommittee of the EIC may be formed by a motion and simple majority vote of the full EIC. Such a motion may include a description of the purpose, scope, number of members, and duration of the subcommittee. Questions, comments, concern on language, any additions, things like that. All right, section 3. 5 members of the committee must be present to constitute a quorum to transact any business that requires a vote. The concurrence of a majority of the committee members present and voting is necessary to determine any question before the committee. Questions, comments, concerns on that section? Okay.
I'm going to scroll down just for ease.
Okay. Section 4, proxy votes shall not be used in any vote. I feel like we might need to define proxy, but any questions, comments, concerns on that? Okay, final section. Bylaws and amendments.
Oh, wait, hold on, Brandy. You skipped over section 5, decision-making models. This is where,
yeah,
this was a big piece. I suggested, so just to give everyone context, I suggested that I've seen other committees and other groups use Robert's Rules of Orders. Just countered that idea knowing that it would be a really formal way to move forward with a meeting, which I absolutely agree. And I think that is kind of counter to what we wanted the spirit of this committee to be. But I still think it's important to have a strong decision-making model and a movement within decisions so that everyone's voice is heard, everyone can bring their ideas to the table, and that we can still move with relative urgency and clarity. That being said, we're not really sure where to move with this, but would love input from others.
Because it's such an extensive document, my recommendation is if we can adopt certain things from Robert's Rules of Order, but not all. Because it's a big book and all we need is some type of frame. It doesn't take all of it, but just some of it to help us out.
That's what I think I suggested that in the thing. Is there somewhere where that breakdown, I think it's like a really simple diagram that kind of breaks down what happened?
Is it your cheat sheet or the cheat sheet you found?
Yeah, that kind of just very simply breaks down some of the ideas behind it. And then there was another one for collaborative decision making. And in my opinion, we should just kind of figure out how to combine those two things so that we can, so like getting rid of the debates. We don't need to have a debate every time we have a disagreement. I think that's not necessarily constructive to making an actual decision. It kind of means like if we disagree on something, then we're going to fight it out. And then if I win, my decision wins. And then we're just going to move on and ignore your decision versus if we disagree on something, let's talk about it. Let's figure out a way to make the two ideas mesh and work, or just, come up with something better. But I think there were some things in both strategies, both ways of doing it that were super beneficial, especially to a group like ours where we are basically just working together to like make ideas, come up with ideas. Like we are going to be doing a lot of work. And as Beth said, like we also want to keep it moving. Like we don't want to get too stuck on one thing for too long. So having those, like the Robert's Rules of Order, essentially do put like time limits on things, I believe. But there is that cheat sheet that I think we should look over. I also don't know if we're going to be able to make this decision tonight.
Here's what I would propose, rather than trying to move forward with coming up with our plan, why don't we leave this as the one thing for our next group of 3 to work on? Because I think it's like the biggest next piece. I think we could probably approve Article 9, but I think that's like the biggest piece is how do we operate as a team, making sure that we do respect all voices and can still like productively move in a meeting.
Is there a way to put it in the bylaws that we will we're committed to some kind of decision-making model without necessarily stating it and make that and talk more about, I don't know anything about decision-making models and I'm a little bit overwhelmed by what was in there. So I didn't really spend a lot of time on it.
Absolutely fair.
Yeah. So it's just it's a whole new concept to me. So I don't really have anything of value to add to the decision, but I didn't know if it was something that we could make kind of broad and talk about it if it becomes something we really need to implement.
I would say the only part of Robert Rules of Orders that we would need would just be if we are debating and we get locked in on something, we need something to stop us from having that conversation so our meetings don't go to 11 o'clock at night.
I do agree on that. And maybe there's something, it's about time limits or
and they have a specific section. We say we're governed by, this piece is governed by Robert's Rules of Orders, this section, and I can help with that. But
if we put that we're governed by Robert's Rules of Orders, though, because I actually did quite a bit of research on that because I was like, what is that? And then I did a lot of reading on it. If we put that specifically in the bylaws, Robert's Rules of Order is a 600 and something page document that is incredibly specific as to how you run a meeting, and we would then be adhering to all 600 and something pages, and we are not capable of that.
I understand it. So my question is, can we just adopt a section? Because when I went through training, it wasn't that extensive, and we took the important pieces, but not the whole thing. So not that we're governed, but we're governed by this section of Robert's, nothing else. These sections. Did it say that we could do that? You don't know.
I can't tell you that one.
I can find out, but I think it's okay to adopt it when it comes to just us getting locked in. We don't have to take all of Robert's Rules of Order.
That makes sense to me.
Okay, I was gonna say, do we need to adopt a decision making, like do we need to have this in the bylaws, or is this something that we can table, discuss, figure out, and essentially come up with what works best for our group as far as like how we move forward, time limits, things like that, and then we can all take some time. Could
we just put something more general in there? What I think you talked about just making sure that everyone's voice is being heard and that being respectful, like make it more about the conversation and the debate versus a specific way that we have to do it, kind of the expectation around what that looks like.
And another thing that I think you could do, and I assume that the secretary would be creating the agenda maybe with, I don't know who's doing that specifically, but any committee member could add something to the agenda
Okay.
to be discussed.
I'm gonna step away real quick to tell my child to get ready for bed. Give me 1 second.
And what if a community member or a resident has an issue that they want to bring to us? Do we receive those and put those on the agenda?
I think you could, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, can we do that?
Well, I think eventually we would get to where we have public comments, maybe prior to meetings after we get up and running. But I would think, and this is something that someone else had already brought up, if somebody in the community brings something up to you that you would like to discuss, you could get it on the agenda. So one of the questions is, how does the community get in touch with us? And I don't really know what the answer is to that, because the list of committee members online doesn't have contact information. And I don't know if you guys would want your personal email out anyway. So the way to get a hold of us, I guess, is through the public comments prior to a meeting.
Okay, Stephen or Eric, is there any way to set up a committee email?
Yeah, like maybe for each of us, or just as a whole?
I was just thinking one specific email where they could email us. Maybe we have some ability to, or maybe you guys, so maybe it's up to the chairs. They run the email, but to Eric and Stephen, is that even a possibility?
Well,
Sure, we can figure something out. I mean,
Yeah.
give us a moment. I mean, you could, perhaps people could send their comments to the city clerk and then she could forward them to you. Something like that. The one thing I would just caution, and certainly we can figure out a way to allow people to have comments from the public in the same manner as we do at city council meetings. The one thing I would caution you about is you can't have a decision-making item added to the agenda. Once the agenda is published, you can't add items to it that weren't on it before. But
could our agenda be to have an open forum with the community? Could that
Sure.
not be our full agenda? Okay. In which case we would literally spend a meeting having dialogue with community members.
Yes, you could do that.
Okay. And as far as the email, can we table that and come back to it? Like, that doesn't need to be necessarily included in the bylaws, but it is something that I think would be beneficial to all of us to have some way to, like, yes, they should be able to call, give comments, whatever, or have like an open forum. But I also think, if somebody's sitting at home on a Tuesday night and has an idea, they should be able to shoot an email to us, because we are about having an open channel of communication. We serve the community and we act as a bridge between the community and city council. So if there is an issue, they should feel comfortable bringing it to us in some way.
And I
Yeah,
think
I would agree with both of those things. You don't have to necessarily address it in your bylaws, and we can, do this in any way that works for you as long as it's legal.
Tara?
No, I was kind of going to say the same thing. I think it's something that we talk
Deal
a lot
with
about, wanting to have access for everyone. So I think that's almost a bigger conversation, because email is also limiting. So just, I think it's something we need to probably think.
I also think
more
that's kind of a
thoroughly
part
on.
of our outreach plan, which we kind of discussed earlier. It was like promoting ourselves, outreach. So we can definitely table that for later.
So for our ability to move forward and kind of get to an ending point today, I'm going to go ahead and leave a comment on section 5. I'm going to add it to what we already have. But I think for our next little subcommittee who's working on this, we want this to describe the spirit of how we move, how we make decisions and hear conversation, rather than an explicit process that is limiting. just going to leave that as a comment so that we can update as we need and then be able to move into our last Article 9.
Okay. Article 9, bylaws and amendments. Section 1, these bylaws may be amended by a majority vote of EIC members at any duly noticed meeting of the EIC, provided the meeting agenda specifically includes mention of the proposed amendment of the EIC bylaws. Questions, comments, concerns on that section? All right. Section 2, an amendment of these bylaws shall not take effect until approved by the city attorney for conformance to applicable law and ratified by resolution of the city council. We had that highlighted because we had a question for Eric, and this depends on the structure of North Kansas City. Eric, Lisa, any thoughts on this part?
This is Eric. I don't know that you would need to have it ratified by a resolution of the city council.
Okay, so we can just remove that.
Take it out.
But we do have to have them reviewed by council, right?
I think that would be a good idea. Yes, I think that's a worthwhile inclusion.
Didn't we also discuss having it reviewed by the Tom Barzy, the city attorney?
Yeah, actually, you know, now that you mentioned that, his title was city councilor, so perhaps you could change it to that. But okay. Yes, that's Tom Barzy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns on section 2 as it reads right now? All right. So then our next steps would be getting the 3 people that are going to get together to kind of talk about the decision-making model and other things that we left on the table.
I think that would be Gabby, myself, and April.
All righty.
To be fair, if one of you does not want to do that or does not have the time to do that, we could also just interchange one of us if you wanted to.
I'm okay with.
Can you clarify that again? I'm sorry. I was thinking about, is there a way to include page numbers? Sorry. In the document. But then, so you're saying the next cohort of review needs to be a different group of 3 or the same group?
It doesn't need to be. I just thought it might be a good idea. But if you, I know you said, that's why I was specifically thinking of you. You said you do better with the editing portions than the creating. So if you didn't want to do that, that's fine. I'm sure one of us would be fine with also jumping into that. Or if you don't have the time, if somebody doesn't have the time to get to that.
And is the expectation, I guess, that this work needs to get done next week, right? Because then we have the meeting the following week on the 4th.
And I think it'd be nice if we could just kind of come back, go over things, and then kind of get that out of the way quickly at the beginning of next meeting so that we can jump into the other things, which at this point might be creating some way that we govern ourselves. But yes, so go ahead.
It would have to be to Eric by end of workday February 1st to be included on the agenda.
Are the 3 of you ladies interested in doing that moving forward? April, Kara.
I'm okay with being, I could probably figure that out.
Yeah, I can
pretty
do it too.
straightforward. I don't think it'll take very long is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, Gabby, you're good to go?
I don't think I can, just given the time frame. I have teaching obligations next weekend.
Okay.
I can do it if you want me to, ladies, if you want to meet over Teams.
Oh.
I like that idea, Lisa.
Also, as a city council member, I could also not do it if that's the preference.
I like that idea. I just thought it would be cool to have some fresh eyes on it. Like, it's not necessary, but we already kind of like went through it. So now somebody else looks at it and then you guys can essentially just have different ideas than we did or different options to add in there, but
All right.
I approve, Lisa.
So it sounds like
Okay.
Lisa, April, and Tara will take the next at bat with finalizing some more ideas and be ready for that.
Well, all right. So that's that. Next section, since we are done with this portion, are there any announcements? Looking at the agenda, any announcement? No? All right, then this special meeting called.
One thing, we kind of discussed that. So in the next meeting, I just wanted to reiterate, in the next meeting, we are coming back and explaining why we are doing this, and also some ideas that we would kind of like to bring forth. Even though a lot of our ideas will come directly from the community, like I know some of us already have some, but just wanted to reiterate that before we leave.
Agreed. Any other announcements? Okay, this meeting of the North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Committee is officially adjourned at 9:41 p.m. on January 21st, 2021. Everyone have a good evening, and I look forward to our next meeting in February.